Hopefully this is okay to post here. My story is not one where I was the target of someone's stalking or harassment, but one where I was the guy who was at the right place at the right time, and I'm fairly certain that my inadvertent intervention may have saved someone I'd never met. Well, who knows what. This was back in 2015 or 16. I'm a career tow truck driver. At this point, I've been towing cars for most of my adult life, and will most likely do so until I retire or die, whichever comes first. At the time, I was working for a pretty small towing company with only 2 employees. We rotated who was on call each weekend. It was my weekend on call. It was summer, so with people being out and about late and whatnot, I was pretty busy. Cleaning up accidents, towing broken cars down both in the city and off the highway. I was fine with it, as I was paid in commission at the time, so the more calls I did, the more money I made. It's Saturday night, now Sunday morning. It's around 2:30 to 3. Like I said, I've been busy. I'm tired, I'm a little grumpy, and I kind of want to go home when my phone rings. It's an insurance company calling asking if we could do a tow for one of their customers who's broken down on the side of the highway. The breakdown location they gave me is about 15 miles out of town, which I normally wouldn't do, but the tow destination happens to be a dealership that's a couple of minutes from my apartment. So I contemplate rejecting the call, but because I'm paid commission, I figure screw it. I can run up, grab this car, drop it off the corner from my place, then hopefully I can just head home and get a couple hours of shut-eye. So I take the call and hop onto the highway. The insurance company provided me with the customer's first name, which for privacy's sake we'll call her Kara, and then gave me a phone number for her. I usually try to make contact with the people who are on the side of the highway to let them know that I'm on my way, and give them an ETA. I tried calling her a couple of times, but she didn't answer. Not unusual. After a short while, I see hazard lights up on the way on the shoulder, so I turn on my strobes and start slowing down. As I approach, I notice that not only is there a late model car that I'm looking for, but there's another car on the scene as well that doesn't have its hazards on, but it's parked in front of the car I'm meant to tow. This is annoying but not uncommon, as I needed to be able to get in front of the disabled car in order to load it, and sometimes people don't realize that. But because the other car is there, I instead pull up behind both cars. Standing at the trunk of the late model car, which is now directly in front of me, are a man and a woman. The woman is probably in her early 20s, dressed to the nines for a night out. She's maybe 5'1" or 5'2". She's wearing tight leatherish or something pants, a halter top, long black hair, very pretty. The man is probably 5'10" and skinny, maybe 150 or 160 pounds, wearing a dark hoodie and dirty jeans. They're standing very close, facing each other. She has her arms crossed and he's leaning down talking to her. I step out of my truck and approach them both, and I introduce myself. They separate a few feet, and I look to the woman and say, "Are you Kara?" She nods. I say that I'm here from her insurance company. I ask what's going on with her car. Immediately, the man pipes up and says, "Yeah, it's just some fuel issues. It's an easy fix. Can you just drop it off at this commuter parking lot? I'm gonna fix it for her there." I'm rather annoyed at this, because the commuter lot in question is further up the highway, and I'm already 15 miles out of town. Like I said before, I only took this call because it was supposed to be coming back toward my apartment. I really wanted to go home. Not only that, but in order to change the original tow destination, I would have to call the insurance company back, wait on hold for them for who knows how long for a representative, and then let them know of the change and try to get them to pay me extra for the deadhead miles back home after I unload. I really didn't want to do any of this. Thirdly, this is a late model car. I'm no mechanic, but it's new enough that whatever is wrong with it is likely covered under warranty, so the dealership is really the best place for it to go anyways. I explain all this to this guy, but he's not really having it. He gets stern with me, saying something like, "Look man, you just need to take the car where I tell you to take it." We go back and forth on this for maybe 60 seconds, and he's just getting madder and madder. "Well, you know what, man? You're not the name insured. Kara is. The easy way to settle this is to ask what she wants me to do with the car. Whatever she says is what I'll do. Fingers crossed she'll want to take it to the dealership so I can get home sooner." I turn to look at Kara to ask her that question. I don't see her right away. She's no longer standing where she was a minute ago, which was slightly off to my right. I continue not to see her until I've turned almost all the way around, because she's standing directly behind me. And by directly, I mean within an inch of my back, arms still crossed. I look down at her, and she locks eyes with me. Her eyes are wide as plates, almost owl-like. Immediately, it feels like she's staring into my soul. She didn't have to say a word, and she didn't have to. I took a step back and did what I felt was like a double take. I looked at him, then at her, then at him again, then back at her. It slowly starts to dawn on me that maybe something isn't quite right. I ask her, "Do you know this guy?" And she ever so slightly shook her head no. The expression on her face when I asked her that will forever be burned into my skull. Turned to the guy and was like, "Oh, you gotta go, man." Now, I'm not a tough guy. I'm a total beta male, if there is such a thing, and I don't care who knows it. I've got nothing to prove. I'm super adverse to confrontation and will run at the first sign of trouble. I'm not exactly the biggest of guys either. I am, however, what I'd like to call sturdy. I'm 5'8" and 240 pounds and have a bit of a gut. I also have big thighs and broad shoulders, and people are generally surprised to find out that I weigh as much as I do. And I think that might have been my saving grace for what happened next. Without a word, the guy starts to move for Kara, and I move to stay in between him. He tries to push me out of his way by shoving me in the chest, but because I believe he underestimated my weight, only pushed me hard enough to make me take a single step back. Immediately, I took that step forward toward him and body check him, hard. As hard as I could, hard enough to completely knock him over, basically onto his ass. Because we rotated during the back and forth push bit, Kara is now in front of me to my right, somewhat between me and the guy who's trying to scramble to his feet. I reached out and snatched up the poor girl by her waist, spun her toward my truck, and yelled for her to get into the driver's side, and she does so. I turn back to the guy, who's standing up again at this point, and he's breathing hard. He gets right up in my face but doesn't do anything, just breathes at me. I stare him right in the face, mustering up the best dad voice I can muster and just say, "You need to go." I'm shaking now, absolutely terrified. I don't know if he has a weapon. Don't know if he's going to try to fight me. I don't know what I would do if he did. Like I said before, I'm not a tough guy. I don't even know how to fight. I've never been in a fight in my life. What if I get badly hurt? What if I get stabbed? What do I even do now? I just want to go home. I wasn't even going to take this damn call. All this is running through my head at lightning speed. After probably around 15 seconds or so, which felt like eons, he huffs a bit, smiles one of the creepiest smiles I've ever seen, and starts to back up, sucking his teeth and rubbing his hands together. He slowly starts walking backward a few steps, then makes his way to the front of the car, gets in and drives off. I stayed motionless, watching him until I could no longer see his taillights. I got Kara's car loaded up onto the tow truck. As we made our way to the dealership, she told me through tears that her car had shut off while she was driving. She pulled over to the shoulder, called her parents because she was on their insurance. Her parents made the call to the insurance company, who eventually dispatched me to her location. While she was waiting, a bit after she made the call, the guy pulled up in front of her, walked up to her passenger side window, and tried to talk to her, ask if she needed help. She told him she was fine and that a tow truck was coming, and she didn't need any help. He persisted, and she tried to tell him off, eventually tried to roll up the window. Apparently, he stuck his arm in the window and got the door unlocked and opened up the door. In fear, she jumped out of the car and ran to the back of her car and stayed put there because it was in the line of sight of traffic. Apparently, he was pretty lewd with her. Whenever she tried to go back to her car, he would prevent her from getting inside. Several minutes later, I showed up. Who knows what would have happened had the timing been any different. Her parents were waiting at the dealership when we arrived. She told them what had just happened. Her parents gave me a $20 tip, which was all the cash they had on them at the time. And Kara gave me a very tight and clearly heartfelt hug before I left. I never saw her again. I tell you what, Every guy has daydreamed at some point of coming to the rescue of a pretty girl in trouble, myself included. You think you're going to be a hero, that you're going to be the cat's ass. You're going to slay the dragon and get the girl and ride off into the sunset, like the king you think you are. But for me, being in that situation, in the moment, was one of the most terrible feelings I've ever had in my entire life. Forced into a confrontation I didn't want, nor was I prepared for. Not knowing what to expect from a clearly not well-hinged individual. I didn't feel like the cat's ass. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a scared little kid encountering a bully on the playground for the first time. If I'm ever in a situation like that again, I will never not intervene. But I really just hope I don't have to. Thanks again for reading.
This story takes place about a year ago. I was traveling all by myself on a road trip to visit family. It was a really long drive, and it would most likely take 2 whole days to get there. During the first day, I booked a hotel for a little bit past the halfway point. I wanted to get a little bit more driving done in the first day if possible. Things started out really well, and I only stopped a couple of times for gas, food, and to use the bathroom. I would stop at places that were the quickest, usually rest stops and gas stations just off the highway. I had been up since early in the morning, and if I had enough caffeine, it would usually keep me going. In the afternoon and early evening, though, I hit a rough patch of traffic. I think there was some road construction, and that was just a popular time to be on the road as well. Things got backed up and significantly slowed down for a few hours. I found myself now a bit behind the schedule I was hoping to be on. The hotel was already booked though, so I had to make it. Finally, at probably like 7 p.m., things started to clear up and the roads were much quieter. I was still almost 5 hours away from the hotel though. I stopped for gas, but then went right back on the road to try to save some time. At about 10 p.m., I was still on the road driving. I had an hour and a half to go, and I had no idea where I was. By now, the roads were very quiet, and I was one of the only cars driving. The area that I was in seemed like it was almost in the middle of nowhere. I was getting really tired as well, and had to use the restroom. I decided that I should stop and try to get an energy drink or something. My car was good on fuel, so I wouldn't need to get gas. I started looking for anything off the side of the road that I could go to. There didn't really seem to be anything though. Finally, I saw a sign for a rest stop just up ahead. I pulled off the road and was happy to hopefully get some energy to finish off the drive. As I approached though, the rest stop was a little underwhelming. It was very small, just a little building. There were some parking spaces along the road that went past it and then back onto the freeway. The place was very dimly lit as well, and nobody else was there besides me. I parked my car and then got out and stretched my legs. I'd been driving for quite a long time without a break. Then I walked inside the small building that the rest stop had. Surrounding it was a little grassy area with a picnic table and what looked like a woods behind it. I had been to a similar rest stop before earlier in the day. Once I was inside, I used the restroom and then left. There was nothing inside the building besides a men's and women's restroom and a small lobby area with just some brochures. There was no vending machine, which is what I was hoping for to get an energy drink or something. At some rest stops, they have the vending machines outside on the side of the building instead of inside of it. I decided to walk around and see if they had one. I went around one side, and it was amazing how much darker and quieter it was over there. I heard some crickets chirping in the distance. The ground went slightly downhill as I walked around the building, but there were no vending machines. I got completely behind the building and was walking around to the other side. That's when I got a kind of eerie feeling for some reason. I stopped and looked around at the woods in the night. Then I heard a noise. It sounded like something was moving just inside of the woods, which was about 50 feet away probably. I thought maybe some kind of animal was there, and I sort of saw a tree branch moving a little. I stopped to see what it was, because I was curious, but part of me was wanting to just turn and run back to my car and get out of there. Still, I stood there looking to see what it was. As my eyes adjusted more to the darkness, I started to notice something. There appeared to be a man crouched sort of behind one of the trees. The guy was looking at me. I couldn't really tell any details about him at all, but he appeared to have a beard. After looking at him for a few seconds, he suddenly stood up. There were no other cars at the rest stop, so I didn't know what he was doing there. After standing, the man took a few steps towards me. I had a really bad feeling, and then the guy suddenly started sprinting in my direction. I took off running for my car as fast as I could. I ran around the building and into the parking area. When I was running, I could hear the man gaining on me from behind. I made it to my car and threw myself inside before slamming and locking the door. As I was scrambling to start my engine and drive away, the man reached my car. He started pounding on the window, and I backed out and drove off after he had smacked my window several times. I got back onto the highway and was really happy to be away from him. I decided to call the police and let them know about what had happened. I didn't want somebody else to stop there and have to encounter him. As for me, I was able to stop a little ways down the road and get an energy drink. I was in the middle of nowhere, but I made it to my hotel just after midnight.
I had just finished my first year of university and had taken up a position as a taxi dispatcher with my boyfriend's cousin's taxi company. For the first week and a half, I worked mainly day shifts until the owner decided to extend the hours to 24/7, and I was the lucky employee who would be covering 3 of the 4 of these shifts a week. The next week, I was working my first night shift alone. The driver would be out all night looking for fares, which meant a lot of the night would be just me. I wasn't uneasy working such a shift by myself since I had worked at a 24-hour coffee shop and was used to midnight shifts. It was also a Wednesday or Thursday night, so it wasn't very busy. The best part about this job was that my boss let me use the internet to play video games on my laptop in the office. From the computer desk in the office, I could see the front door, a portion of the front desk, and most of the front windows, so I could keep a close eye on what was happening outside. Plus, the bell above the door always alerted me to a new customer, so I couldn't be caught off guard if I got too into my game. On this particular night, I was working with a taxi driver named Dave. Dave is about 6'3" and 300 pounds, plus he suffers from severe health problems, one of which made all of his movements slow and painful. He definitely wasn't Mr. Fitness or the type of person who would be able to defend himself or others very easily. Sometime during the early hours of the morning, around 1:30 to 2 a.m., Dave gets a call to go pick up someone in a town about 15 minutes away. He gathered up his stuff and drove into the night, while I headed into the office and continued playing my video game. About 15 minutes later, I caught something over the top of my laptop. My mind froze. I could hear panting, and in the reflection of the window I could see someone sitting in one of the waiting chairs. I walked to the doorway that connects the front room with the office. Some guy with a massive rat tail had managed to ninja his way into the office and was now sitting in one of the chairs with his face buried in his hands, panting heavily. He was dirty, sweaty, and sounded like he had just run a marathon. Now, the rat tail should have tipped me off, but I found it more hilarious than frightening. A few moments passed and I finally built up the courage to ask him if he needed a cab. He didn't respond at first. I asked him again, and he looks up at me. I took a step back into the office. His face was scratched and covered in blood from the wound on the top of his head. I was shocked and immediately offered assistance to him. He replies with, "I'm fine. I don't need no help. I just want to go home." I asked him if he needed a cab and, if so, where he was going. He told me he lives about 20 minutes away and wants Dave to take him home. After that, shit started to get weird. I called over to Dave using the radio to tell him that there was a fare in the office and that he wanted a ride. He told me he'd be another 10 minutes or so. My hand was on the phone the entire time in case this guy made any sudden movements. Instead of going back into the office, I decided it was best to stay out front where there are 2 great big bay windows that make it easy to see what is happening inside the taxi office. I didn't feel as though he was a threat at all, but he seemed really angry at something, so I wanted to make sure that if something happened to me, people would be able to see it. So I walked out into the front room, and as I get closer to the gentleman, that's when I see it. He's not just bleeding from the head, but from the shoulder and knee. I asked him again if he's okay, then I offered to call an ambulance for him. Bad idea. "You don't need to be doing that," he told me. It ain't like I killed nobody, right? I never killed nobody. Don't go doing that. You don't need to call anyone. I just want to go home. I'm sorry. I just noticed that you're bleeding pretty badly and thought maybe you'd like someone to make sure you're okay, I replied. I didn't kill nobody. That asshole should have kept his mouth shut. He had what was coming to him. He shouldn't have said those things. But it ain't like I killed nobody. You don't need to call nobody. I just want to go home. Okay, I tell him. But you're bleeding. It ain't like I killed nobody, he replied. I swear I didn't kill nobody. Please don't call the cops. I don't need the cops. I just need to go home. I didn't kill anyone. Silence for a few minutes. He notices the phone clutched in my hand. I fell down, he blurted out. Pardon? I fell, he repeated. That's why I'm bleeding. I fell. It ain't like I killed nobody. He suddenly got up and started pacing. He was growing impatient for his cab, and I was scared. Blood was now on the chair and floor. I had the phone in my hand, and every once in a while he broke the silence with another string of incoherent babbling about how he had done nothing wrong because he hadn't killed anyone, and that I didn't need to call the cops because he was a good guy. Eventually Dave radios over that he's about 2 minutes away, and I breathe a sigh of relief. He pulled up out front. The man gets into the car and they drive off. Now I'm worried for Dave, so I call the cops. I reported what happened, and they followed the taxi cab to this guy's house where they arrested him. Turns out this guy had run away from a nearby bar after he had physically assaulted a fellow patron. To what extent, I never found out. He injured him with a sharp object, I assume a pocket knife or needle, took off running, fell and managed to find his way to the taxi office. During his time in the cab office, the police had been searching for him. So technically no, he didn't kill anyone, but he did assault and attempt to murder someone. I also found out that one of the other drivers, Steven, knew the guy from high school years ago. His name is Duke, which explains the rat tail, and he has a history of violence. He also has a history of coming home drunk and cracking his wife's skull open from time to time. Whether he had planned to that night, I couldn't say. But I'm just glad that the guy ended up in the drunk tank for the night. His wife was unharmed, and the guy who got stabbed apparently didn't die. At least, I assume he didn't, since I still see Duke every now and then walking the streets with his glorious rat tail, which means he didn't get arrested. But in all seriousness, I wish you guys could have seen this rat tail. That thing was impressive. When I was in college, I attended film school, and let me tell you, I loved it. What a great experience. I met so many awesome people and learned so much, and I always loved it when we had a chance to create a short film, a chance to be able to tell stories with your unique vision. For me, I had a really hard time brainstorming and coming up with ideas while I was physically at the school. I couldn't concentrate in the dorms, and the library and places like that just didn't give the creative vibe. So, I started going on these long night drives whenever I needed to brainstorm. I'd throw on some tunes and just drive around letting my mind go to all sorts of wild places. On one of these night drives, I started to see flashing lights in my rearview mirror. When I looked back, the lights were getting closer and it was clear that I was getting pulled over for something. I pulled over and noticed that the car pulled over behind me. The lights went off, and I just sat there for a minute or two contemplating what I could have done possibly to get pulled over like this. I took the key out of the car and set it on my dashboard. I don't know if that's like a universal thing, but I was always told when you get pulled over, put the key there. I started to look in the mirror, trying to make out any details that I could, but it was just too dark. From what I could tell, it looked like a pickup truck, but I couldn't be 100% certain. I started to have my doubts that this was even a real cop. I had just never seen a pickup truck cop car. And I started thinking that it could have been an undercover cop, but I still kept going to that same point, which was, what did I do? Finally, someone emerged from the vehicle. It was dark, but I could clearly see that this person was wearing black pants and a black hooded sweatshirt. Full alarm bells were going off because I was sure that I had never seen a cop with a hoodie on, but it didn't speed away because I still had that fear of, what if this was a cop? I would be fleeing the police and they would have my license plate, and it was a whole mental battle that I was having. He looked like wobbling all over the place as he was walking towards my car, and when he got to my window, which was rolled down about a quarter of the way, I could see most of his face, even through the hood as it was firmly on. He starts shouting from outside the window, "Step out of the vehicle now." I could immediately smell the booze reeking out of his breath towards my face through the little crack in the window. And I know I'm stupid, but it took me this long to finally be sure that this wasn't a real cop, and I just yelled through the window, "No," grabbed my keys, and tried to start my car. While I was struggling to find the keyhole, the man shouted again that I said get out right now. He then lifted part of his sweatshirt and started to pull something out that looked like a firearm, but I couldn't be sure. I just ducked down, put the car into gear, and drove off as fast as I could. I couldn't enjoy any relief in that moment, though, because within seconds, I now saw him following me. He didn't turn on the flashing lights, but got close enough to my car that he was straight up tailgating. If I switched lanes, he switched lanes. The speed limit on these dark roads was 45 miles per hour, and I was driving over 65 miles per hour trying to lose this guy. Before I knew it, I was almost 30 minutes away from campus, and this guy was still directly on my tail. I then did something that I had seen a million times in movies, and I couldn't believe that it actually worked. I was closing in on an on-ramp for the highway. I waited until the last possible second, and then swerved over and got onto the highway, forcing him to miss the ramp or he may have crashed. About 2 minutes passed and I saw no lights behind me. I hoped that I had finally lost this madman. Instead of getting off at the next exit, which I had a feeling that he may have thought was my plan, I made an illegal U-turn on the highway and got to the other side. I made the short drive back and got off the exit that I got on. I had no idea where I was. I drove around slowly for a while until I found a 24-hour gas station, and I go inside and told this guy what had happened and basically just begged him to call the police in that moment, which thankfully he did. I also had to ask him for directions back to the school. Now this was before everyone had cell phones all the time, so I couldn't just GPS my way back. I had a brick phone that I usually just kept in my dorm, and when the cops showed up, I gave them all the information I could, which honestly wasn't that much since it was so dark. I mean, how many people own a pickup truck and a hoodie? Probably millions. The cop was honest and told me that they most likely would never find out who the man was since I didn't get any plate information. He was super nice though and escorted me back to the school just in case that man resurfaced. I think about that night a lot and just how crazy it was and how stupid I was. I wanted to punch the past version of myself for pulling over and not reacting faster. Whenever I have a truck tailgating me at night now, I'm always reminded of that night, and I just hope that all these years later that truck man never returns.
A few months ago, I was partaking in one of my many late drives. I usually just drive around if I'm stressed or go sit by the water to clear my mind, and it's a total mental health saver. Anyways, after about partway through my drive, I decided to go park at the entrance to a popular walking trail. I figured it was late, so nobody would be there to complain about me blasting my music or relaxing in my car. Note that you drive to the trail by taking a narrow and bumpy dirt road, and the speed limit is 20 kilometers per hour. But it's full of massive potholes, so you usually have to drive pretty slow or you'll screw up your car. After navigating the narrow pothole-ridden road like an expert pilot, I arrived at the parking lot in one piece. But much against what I expected, there were 5 or 6 cars spaced out along the parking lot's edge and one closer to its center. This on its own isn't too out of the ordinary. However, it was close to 2 a.m. at this point, so I was a little creeped out, but it didn't really faze me. After I found a spot close to the middle, I noticed that none of the cars had any lights on, not inside or out. This was odd, as I'm pretty sure people don't usually go for group walks at 2 a.m., And if someone was sitting in them, you'd see the center console lights or something else light up at the very least. After all, who wants to sit in complete darkness? Not giving it much more thought, I cranked up my music and laid back while staring at the sky. Nothing happened until 20 minutes later. Like clockwork, car engines came to life and headlights cut through the dark. Each car except for the one by the entrance left in a line as if connected by a chain. At this point, I felt like something was off. It just didn't make sense. After seeing the line of cars leave, I figured I should head home myself. So I started up my car and began backing out of my parking space. As I did, the last car's high beams came on. This made it so that I couldn't see what I was doing, and it annoyed me. So I finished pulling out, a little too quickly, and went to the road. The other car followed. As I slowed down to avoid the potholes, the other car sped up. This continued until they were directly behind me. Keep in mind, I still couldn't properly see as they left their high beams on. This freaked me out, so I decided to speed up drastically, and as expected, the car behind me did the same. At this point, I was traveling down the narrow road at about 60 kilometers per hour, while gritting my teeth over all the expensive sounds coming from my poor car. But the car was still tailgating me. I began to freak out, slamming my gas pedal into the floorboard and attempting to speed off. But to no one's surprise, this didn't seem to shake them. We were no longer on the narrow road at this point, but rather a connecting road to the main one. I was scared. I needed to think of something fast, or I might end up on a milk carton or some missing person report, and that was all I could think about. Then I saw it. Up ahead, there was a sharp turnoff onto an area that overlooks the water. Think of it like a deep shoulder that you can park in while facing the lake. This was the perfect place for me to loose the car behind me. As I got closer, I continued to speed up. I was traveling at well over 80 kilometers per hour. Then, once I got a couple meters away, I slammed on my brakes and turned my wheel as sharp as I possibly could, almost ending up in the bushes. As I did so, the other car shot past me and continued down the road. I felt so relieved. After gathering myself, I pulled out and drove down to the intersection to go home. I was home free and coming down off of an adrenaline rush higher than the CN tower. Finally, the light turned green and I could go. But as I did, I saw the car driving down the side street that went to the water, and it sent chills through my spine. What if I stayed there rather than driving back? What did these people want from me? I'm truly glad I never had the opportunity to find out.
I used to work at a gas station many years ago. I was the clerk in the convenience store that we had, and it was open 24 hours. So, as you can guess, I worked overnights, and when I did, I would be all by myself. Now, the gas station was located across the street from some stores, such as Target and a few others, so the area would get a lot of traffic during the day. A highway was also nearby, and the gas station was on a corner. At night, though, all of the other businesses nearby closed by 10 or 11. Things would be very quiet until probably 6 a.m. or so. I worked almost every night for a while, and was getting used to being there overnights. It was mostly pretty quiet, and the gas station would get cars here and there, but people rarely came inside. Between the hours of midnight and 5 a.m., the average amount of people that came inside was probably about 4 or 5, so roughly 1 per hour. One night, I was working, and it was a typical quiet night. By now, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning. I was behind the counter, and nobody else was inside. No cars were at any of the gas pumps either. At one point, I saw a car pulling in from the street. It was a white van, one of those typical creepy-looking ones that was kind of old as well. It slowly drove up and parked in one of the spaces out front. I expected somebody to get out of the van and come inside, but instead, the van just sat there for a while. I didn't really have anything better to do other than to watch it, so I did. I couldn't tell who was driving, but soon I realized that they probably weren't going to come inside. After sitting there for maybe 20 minutes, the van eventually backed out. I thought it might leave, but instead it drove around to the side of the building. There was a few more parking spaces there, and it was now out of my sight. I honestly found this a little bit odd, and in the middle of the night, sort of creepy as well. I always tried my best not to let anything scare me though working overnights. After the van went to the side of the building, probably an hour or so went by. Now it was well past 3 a.m. Nobody came inside the store, and in that hour, only one car got gas. Then I noticed that somebody was walking on the sidewalk up towards the entrance. It appeared to be a man, and he had come from the side where the van had gone before. Could this be the driver? He was wearing a large black winter jacket and the hood was up, but he was looking down so I couldn't really see his face at all. He made it to the doors and then walked inside. After entering, the man walked to the right and away from me at the counter. After disappearing down an aisle, I focused my attention back down to my phone. Several minutes went by. When I looked up again, I noticed that the man was just standing there, about 40 feet away from me. He was facing me and looking in my direction with an angry look on his face. His hands were in his pockets, and I was confused as to what he was doing. After glaring at me for like 10 seconds, he didn't move or look away. I said hi to him and asked him if I could help him with anything. He didn't answer me and just kept standing there. Then I asked him if he was okay. The man still didn't answer me. I was really confused and not sure what to do. After standing there for a few more seconds, the man then turned and slowly walked out. Then he walked back down the sidewalk and returned to the side of the building. Less than a minute later, I saw the white van drive away. I was really glad that he was gone. The rest of my shift was pretty quiet. Eventually, a few more people came in. I was trying to figure out what that guy was doing though for the rest of my shift. His behavior was just really strange. I worked almost every night back then, and probably 3 nights later, I was working and it was about 2 a.m. or so. Once more, I was by myself and there were no customers. It was very quiet. Then I saw a car pulling into the gas station, and I soon realized that it was an old white van, just like the one from the other night. I remembered what had happened the other night, and I just hoped that it was not the same guy. I was already feeling creeped out. The van slowly drove around the gas pumps and over to the parking spaces out front. Then it turned and started to back into one of the spaces. After it parked, the van sat there for several minutes. But all of a sudden, I heard a car door open and soon saw what appeared to be the same man walking around it. He went to the very back of the van and opened it up. A short time later, he emerged holding something that looked like a crowbar. Then he closed the back doors to his van and started slowly walking to the entrance. He was wearing the same thing as the time prior. I had a bad feeling as I watched him slowly walk into the entrance doors. After getting inside, he then turned and started walking towards the back of the store. Quickly he went out of my sight, and everything in the store became extremely quiet. About 5 minutes went by. Then, all of a sudden, I heard a crashing sound. It seemed like the man had hit something, probably with his crowbar. I heard another sound after that. It was like he was just whacking stuff. Several seconds into this, he seemed to move closer, and then I saw him appear in an aisle a ways away. I got out from behind the counter and ran out of the store. They weren't paying me enough to stay in there and deal with it. I ran all the way to my car and got inside of it. Then I called the police. I waited there with the doors locked, watching the store. I was parked behind the gas pump, so I was a decent ways away from the store. Probably about 3 or 4 minutes after I called the police, I saw the guy leaving. He slowly walked out and went back inside of his van. Then he drove off. Less than a minute after he left, the police arrived. I told them that the man was gone, and we went inside the store to see that lots of things were off the shelves. It was all messed up from the guy whacking it with his crowbar. It was like he had gone on a rampage. We watched the whole thing unfold on surveillance tapes, and the guy was just whacking stuff. Then he calmly left. It was the craziest thing that I had ever seen. After that incident, the police investigated to try to look for the guy. They also had a police officer at the store overnights for the next week or so. The guy didn't come back, and I didn't work there for much longer either. I'm glad that I quit that job, because ever since it happened, I was really nervous working there at night.
Back when I was about 16 years old, because of my living situation at least twice a month, I'd have to make a 2-hour drive from a city area back to my parents' house in a rural area. I'd say about 90 minutes of that drive was just country road with nothing but valley, corn, or some other crop on either side with the occasional farmhouse, or something that you think people might go in and out of willingly along the way. Because of how used to this drive I'd already been beforehand, I didn't think much of driving that long stretch of no cell service, no phone booth area. Nothing had happened yet, so surely nothing would happen ever. Right? In the middle of one of those drives back while the night was slowly taking over as I was driving, I saw a flash of light. That was weird. Maybe just a momentary anemic moment. Another flash. Well, maybe someone coming this way has their high beams wonky or something. Another flash. Alright, something's wrong. I slow down a bit so as not to get blinded periodically and swerve off the road and try to figure out what was ahead. Further in the distance, I think I see a person. Actually, multiple. My eyesight's well and good at this time in my life, so I was putting two and two together, getting close enough to realize there were 4 people on this shitty country road lined up across it as if it to make a roadblock to prevent any cars from passing through. Another note to this is that I don't see any car around them that they could have come in. Don't remember any farmhouses or sheds nearby either. The rest of this encounter felt like it took place in the span of an hour because of my anxiety, but it was likely no more than 5 minutes in hindsight. I'm driving maybe 10 miles per hour now as I'm getting closer and realizing that I'm definitely without a doubt approaching a line of 4 grown-ass people with huge bright white masks on staring in my direction. 2 of them definitely have bats, or some other distinctly long blunt objects, and 1 person is holding something that the flashes are coming from. I've seen enough horror movies and heard enough stories about crimes on roads like this to think in that moment I only have 2 options. Slow down and hope they eventually part way around my car, running the risk that they could very well get the jump on me in my dinky car, or pick up the pace and disregard whether or not they'll have the chance to move out of the way when I potentially accelerate through them. I decided the latter. I had no means to protect myself with other than a bat in the trunk of my own car, and at the time I was a young teen who could easily get knocked down with a solid slap because of my build, and my car was shit enough to where if I stopped I wouldn't doubt someone could break in with easy force. Now, hearing gravel and dirt kick up from under my tires, I was more freaked out at the potential I could drive myself off the road along with taking out some strangers, who I am now dead certain are carrying bats as I accelerate towards them. I'm proper freaking out, but I've accepted that this was the decision I made from the adrenaline of fear of any situation. I accelerated more, and thankfully the 2 that were directly in my way lunged out of the way just in time to not get hit. I stop accelerating to catch my breath and see them in my rearview mirror. The other 2 for some reason trying to haul ass towards my car as if they could catch up, and it became so real in that moment that there were people who were intentionally trying to get the jump on me in the middle of nowhere. Probably not just kids trying to get the kicks and giggles out of freaking someone out, but real adults trying to harm someone that came that way. I just focused on driving out of there as fast as I could. I focused on going forward, didn't turn the radio back on to distract me, and felt shook by the experience in general. The most up part, honestly, was getting home and realizing that part of what I was driving on wasn't gravel. It was nails that were now embedded into my tires. Praise whatever God may be out there for me somehow having those sturdy tires. I didn't tell my parents the full story about what happened, and they just assumed I was being reckless and someone was playing a prank. I told the story to some of my friends, and they told me I probably wasn't in any serious situation, and they were just trying to get a scare out of me, especially since being in a car was a pretty big advantage in the situation, which I can't deny. Still, creeped the absolute hell out of me, and I remember it every single time I drive down a road that looks any type of similar.
When I was younger, each summer and almost every New Year, my family would pack the car and go on a road trip to visit family in Mexico. We never had any problems until one particular trip when I was 8. Like every road trip before, we left our home in North Texas around 6 p.m. in order to reach our destination the following morning. So around 2 a.m., we crossed into Mexico. And that's when things got weird. When you're on an only stretch of freeway in the middle of a desert, you don't tend to freak out about having the same car behind you for miles. It was practically pitch black on the outside of our car windows, the only visible shapes being the dotted stars and the eerie silhouettes of the cacti. We'd been in Mexico for an hour and a half, still had a few more hours to drive, and I remember sleeping but not being semi-conscious of what was around me, because I didn't have the skill to really fall asleep in a car. So when my mother suddenly spoke my dad's name, I heard her. Miguel, that car behind us, it's been behind us since we left Laredo. My dad peeked at the car and shrugged off my mom's tension. A lot of cars use this road. He's probably going to Reynosa or another city, and left it at that. Despite his sureness, my mom kept a weary eye on that car behind us. By this time, my siblings and I were hyper aware of the car and entertained ourselves with watching it through the gaps in the luggage that blocked the rear window. We got tired pretty quickly. "He's getting closer," my mother noted. We turned to watch as the car inched closer and closer to ours. "He's too close, Miguel." She was right. By this time, the car was practically pressed against the rear of our car, and on a lonely stretch of the highway in the middle of nowhere with another few hours until daylight. It was downright scary. We couldn't do much. My dad didn't slow down, didn't stop, and he didn't speed away either. He just drove, and that car followed. The next 30 minutes were the most tense we had ever experienced. The car would ease off sometimes, only to press its blinding headlights against our rear once more. Like he knew he was freaking us out, and enjoyed it. It was during one of the periods that the car had pulled away that my mom spotted a police car up ahead, parked on the side of the road, and she didn't miss a beat. "Pull over, right in front of the police. Pull over right now, Miguel." And he did. And that car kept driving. I wonder how confused the policeman must have been as he watched my dad park our car right in front of him. The policeman came over and asked what was wrong. My mother urgently told him everything. The car, the way it followed us and taunted us. The policeman took her claims seriously and told us how people were victimized and had their car stolen on these empty highways by thugs and criminals. Then he offered to drive behind us for a while to make us feel safer. We drove off with that police cruiser behind us, relieved. Until about 10 minutes later, when we saw something that confirmed the policeman's words and my mother's worst fears. We saw that car pulled over, on the side of the road, waiting.
Thankfully, everything stopped after that, minus a few phone calls the security guy got for about a week. He told the guy that I had quit because of him, and the calls stopped. This happened in the fall of 1993, when I was 20 years old. In the interest of context, this was before I started college, and I was working in the material prep department of a plastics factory on the night shift. I was the only woman in the department, and my male coworkers were initially skeptical that I could handle the job, but I proved myself and earned their respect. It was hard work, but on the plus side, it also put me in the best shape of my life. It was also about this time that I dumped my abusive boyfriend. He was verbally, emotionally, and physically abusive, as well as an alcoholic. This fact, more than anything, is probably why I got myself into this situation in the first place. I had just gotten off of work, and it was about 1:30 a.m. My car was running on fumes, so I stopped at a local gas station to fill up. While I was pumping gas, a woman about my age approached me looking nervous and scared. She said that she had been at her boyfriend's house and they had a fight. She walked up to the gas station to use the payphone and call a friend to pick her up. On her way to the station, a car pulled up as she was walking and the guys inside started catcalling and harassing her. With a slight movement of her head, she indicated a car that was parked off to the side by the gas station dumpsters. I saw a large light green car, like a Caddy or a Lincoln, with at least 2 or 3 shadowy figures inside. She said they threatened her, and she was too scared to call her friend and wait. The woman was neat, well-dressed, and didn't seem high or drunk or anything like that. She just seemed really nervous and freaked out, so I didn't even hesitate. I finished pumping my gas and told her to hop in the car, that I'd take her home. At that time on a weeknight, there was little traffic, so I booked it right out of the gas station and asked her where she lived. She kept twisting around in the seat to see if the car was behind us, and when I asked her to put her seatbelt on, she ignored me and kept looking for the car. I assumed she was just scared. A few blocks down the road, however, I noticed she was looking around the car, and she started asking me about money.
"Where's your purse? Where's your bag? I need money. You need to give me some money."
My stomach sank. I have this woman in my car, and now she's gonna rob me? But when I thought about it, robbery just didn't make much sense. I was driving a 1985 Chevette and was wearing my work clothes, a ratty t-shirt and jeans with combat boots. I did not look like a person with a lot of cash, primarily because I wasn't a person with a lot of cash. She twisted around the seat again and started yelling, "There they are! There they are!" She didn't sound scared anymore. I checked the rear view, and sure enough, the light green car is right behind me. She started cackling and bouncing up and down in the seat. She's laughing like crazy, opening the glove box, looking in the back for a bag or purse, telling me all the messed up shit these guys are planning to do to me. Now, if I had been smart, I would have just driven to the police station. Actually, if I had been very smart, I would have called the cops from the gas station and waited with her until they arrived. That would have been the intelligent thing to do. Unfortunately, none of this crossed my mind until later. In the moment, I just got really angry. I realized three key things all at once. There was an intersection up ahead, with cars on either side waiting to cross, and the light had just turned yellow. I had a spare box cutter that I kept for work in the driver's side door compartment. The crazy bitch still hadn't put on her seatbelt. I didn't think. I floored it and passed under the yellow light just as it turned red. I glanced back to see if the green car was still behind me, but the cross traffic at the intersection had just started to move, and they hadn't caught up. The bitch started yelling. I slammed on the brakes and she hit the dash and windshield with a solid and viciously satisfying crack. When she rebounded to the passenger seat, I had the box cutter in her face and was screaming some serious batshit crazy stuff. I can't remember exactly what I said, but it was along the lines of, "Get the f*** out of my car before I cut off your face and make you eat it." The crazy screaming and box cutter combo worked. She grabbed blindly at the handle and popped the door open. I started shoving and punching her until she tumbled out the door to the curb. I stomped on the gas, got to the next turn, and squealed around it with the passenger's door still open. I made a few more turns because I was afraid that the green car might catch up to me. After a little while, I stopped to close the passenger door, and then I cut across town and got onto the highway to go home. I was on the highway for about 5 minutes before the shake started. I pulled off to the shoulder to calm down, and then I drove home. I told my sister I was living with her temporarily after the breakup with my ex about everything that had just happened. She wrapped me in a tight bear hug while simultaneously yelling about how stupid I was for not going to the police. I've never been so glad to be yelled at in my life.